Okay, let's talk about greatness, what it means to live a great life, what it means to be successful, what it means to really flourish. Because we seem to spend most of our life, don't we, trying to climb the ladder of success, trying to climb the ladder of greatness. And we're told really from a very, very early age that this is the way to live life. When we go to school, we're told, that we need really good grades to get exams. And then we need told we need to get good exams to get a good job. And then when we get into employment, we're constantly trying to climb up the ladder of promotion, to have more responsibility, to flourish in the workplace, to achieve more, to be more respected, and maybe to even have more power. And we're told by society, really, aren't we, that bigger is better, and that greatness and flourishing come through big and great achievements. And to be honest, we take that understanding with us into the church as well. We think that a church that's got 2 or 3,000 people attending it is somehow going to be greater or better than a church with maybe 10 or 15 people attending it. So what does greatness in life really look like? How can we be great people living a great life? Well, I want to look with you today at Mark chapter 10, verses 42 to 45, because Jesus addresses this issue here. But what Jesus does is he actually flips it on its head. And he tells us that greatness in the kingdom of God, greatness in life is not achieved by ascending some sort of ladder. It's actually achieved by descending into humility. And Jesus in this passage outlines 3 movements about how we can sort of descend into greatness that hopefully will rewire how we think and how we live. And the first thing that Jesus has to say is that if you want to live a great life, then you need to stop climbing the ladder. In verses 42 and 43, Jesus calls the disciples over to him, and he says this, he says, that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them, but it shall not be so with you. Now, this is a really interesting passage, because Jesus was meeting with his disciples and they'd just been arguing amongst themselves about who was going to be greatest in the kingdom of God, who could sit at Jesus' right hand, who could sit at his left hand. They were seeking prestige in the kingdom. So Jesus calls them over to himself in order to answer this question. But what's interesting is he doesn't squash their ambition. He never tells them that it's wrong to seek greatness, that it's wrong to try to flourish. And it isn't wrong for you or me to try to seek greatness. What he wants us to do is reimagine what greatness actually looks like. He's not saying the pursuit of greatness is wrong in and of itself. It's just different than how we assume it might be. Jesus says here in Mark 10, that greatness isn't achieved by having power over other people. It's achieved by using power for other people. We might crave control. We might crave recognition, perhaps in the workplace, or maybe in our parenting, or maybe in the church amongst the ministries that we do. We want people to think that we're successful, that we're flourishing, that we're great at what we do. But Jesus says, that greatness in the kingdom isn't about having other people think you're great. It's about being able to step back and allowing other people to thrive. If you want to be great this week, according to kingdom values, then you perhaps could speak words that will amplify the value of someone else, that will encourage someone else. If you want to be great in the world this week, according to kingdom values, then maybe give away credit. It might be that people are giving you credit for something that went well at work or at church or whatever. And you might just want to say, I had a part to play, but, John did most of the work, or, Sarah put as much into it as me. And you might want to kind of deflect some of that recognition and pass that over to other people. Encourage others, create space for other people to thrive. Stop trying to climb the ladder of recognition and greatness yourself, and maybe stand below and give other people a leg up onto that ladder. Secondly, Jesus says in Mark chapter 10 that if we want to live great lives, we need to adopt the posture of a slave. Now, this is really interesting that Jesus says this. He's saying that greatness isn't just about serving others, it actually comes about through slavery. Now, nowadays we hear those words servant and slave, and here in the West in the 21st century we kind of might think of that metaphorically or in a sort of poetic sense. But of course, when Jesus was alive, there were slaves, there were servants, they were considered the lowest of the low. So it was actually quite a kind of shocking claim that Jesus was making here. But what he's saying is that as Christians, we are not called to occasionally serve other people, but we are called to create a new identity of complete and utter self-giving love for other people. In verse 43 and 44, Jesus says, "Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all." Now, you see that in a sense, he's escalating, or maybe descending from servant down to slave. You must be a servant of everyone. You must be a slave of all. What's the difference? Well, a servant, of course, would retain their own identity. They would be employed by somebody, but they would have a day off. They might get public holidays off. But a slave has no identity of their own, no identity out of being other than being owned by their master. And they don't have time off. Their whole life is one of identification into whoever their master is. And Jesus is saying that we're not servants in the kingdom in that sense. Our identity is wrapped up in the fact that we are slaves of God. We are owned by God, and we have no self outside of our role as children of God. And so, there's a descent into greatness here, a descent into the fact that we are slaves of Christ, and we are to give our lives over to giving love towards him and others. Now, what might that look like for you? Well, I'm not saying you need to be a doormat. We do need to avoid being abused by others. We do need to avoid being used in a negative way by others. Jesus isn't suggesting that. But what he is saying is that we need to be completely devoted to loving other people. We need to, you need to see your time, your energy, your skills as not being your own, but being God's. And God has given you your time and your skills and your energy in order to serve other people. Now, what might that look like? Well, this week it might mean, stopping what you're doing and taking time to listen to your child, maybe spending some time to play with your child when you might actually be itching just to get on with your work or to get on with some tasks. It might mean celebrating a colleague's success at work, even when you feel a bit resentful towards them, because we sometimes do resent other people's success, don't we? It might mean serving someone else when you've got no hope of recognition or even being thanked by them. Adopting this posture of a slave is about recognizing that discipleship grows not through domination, but through self-emptying service. We need to empty ourselves and give ourselves completely in love to others in order to achieve greatness in the kingdom. And thirdly, Jesus says that in order to live a great life according to kingdom values, we need to have a cross-shaped life. Servanthood isn't just something that Jesus commands us to do. Servanthood, Jesus embodied servanthood. It flows from the heart of his own mission. Jesus didn't just teach service, he lived service in the way he lived his life day by day, bringing healing to people and teaching them and even raising them from the dead. But most importantly of all, Jesus embodied servanthood through the cross by dying on the cross so that we could be forgiven and the gateway to glory be opened for us. Jesus' achievement on the cross is the greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of the world, the ultimate example of greatness. So if you want to be great, you need to embody the values of the cross in your own life and live those out for other people. Jesus said in Mark 10:45, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So if you want to live a great life, how can you give your life for other people? Well, maybe that might involve forgiving others when it costs you deeply to do so. Jesus has done that on the cross for you, hasn't he? It might be about giving of yourself to others when it's inconvenient. Jesus has done that for you on the cross, of course. It might be about being welcoming and hospitable and showing kindness to others who can't repay you, just as Jesus has shown hospitality and kindness to you, and there's nothing you can do to repay him. By forgiving others, by giving of yourself, by showing kindness to others, you are embodying the values of the kingdom, the values of greatness. The cross isn't just something to admire, it's something to embody in your own life. So when Jesus gives us instruction on how to be great, how to live a great life, he's not just inviting us into a life of service whereby we will be admired by others. Instead, he's inviting us into a hidden revolution where greatness is often invisible. Heaven is full of great unsung heroes, the caregivers, cleaners, prayer warriors, people who quietly choose love over recognition, who quietly choose to serve others and to look out for the needs of others rather than gaining any recognition for themselves. And so if you choose to live like that, if you choose to love others rather than seeking recognition for yourself, it's actually a really freeing way to live. This thing about always seeking to climb the ladder, always seeking more power and more control and more respect from others, and more likes on your social media page and whatever it is, it's exhausting. It's an exhausting way to live, to constantly be pursuing that. But, if you are prepared instead to descend into greatness, to descend into humility, to die to ego, to die to self, to not be concerned with what other people think about you, just to love them and to show kindness to people. It's the most freeing way to live because we are free from the exhaustion of needing to be impressive. If you can give up the need to impress others, you will be free. I can tell you that. Greatness is not something to grasp. Greatness is a gift that we receive when we give ourselves over to others. So the question for you this week really is not how can I achieve more for Jesus? The question for you this week really, I think, is how can I disappear into love so that Jesus is seen through me? That's the important thing. If you can disappear into love, be so humble and die to self so that God is seen through you, then that is a beautiful way to live. It's ultimate freedom and it is ultimate greatness and success because you will be embodying the values of the kingdom of God in your life.